Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Welcome to episode 24 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is Mark Leslie Lefebvre, and I'll be your host for this episode. You know, for a change, because it's not like I haven't been the host for the previous 23 episodes or anything. But just you wait. Once you get comfortable thinking you know what to expect, I might just throw you for a loop and have someone else host. Well, that could be fun. But for now, you're stuck with me. Now, this episode was a great one for me to record because I got a chance to hang out with Laura and Dan Martone. I met them a few years ago at the Smarter Artist Summit, which is run by Johnny, Sean, and Dave of Sterling and Stone and the former self-publishing podcast. Now, Dan and Laura are not only awesome people that I can never spend enough time with, especially when Laura and I get to karaoke together, but they're a husband and wife team who, in this interview, talk about how they write and how they collaborate together, the way that they balance the workload and the different tasks together, as well as how they work with other writers. They also share a little bit about their unique travels, and they share so much more. It's a great chat, and I know you're going to enjoy and learn from it just like I did. But first, I wanted to start off this episode sharing a few updates. First, I've come to the first full week of results from the free Kobo promo that I ran. Now, this was a $10 Canadian paid feature for a free book, a perma-free book, which is a mini story collection of about 16,000 words called Night Cries. And it was volume 1 in my Nocturnal Screams series of short story collections. Using the internal Kobo Writing Life Promotions tool, I applied for and was accepted for a free featured spot in the sci-fi fantasy horror section of their free page, which went live on Monday, May 28th and ended on Sunday, June 3rd. That was that first week. Now, before starting this promo, here are my stats on Kobo. I had 6 downloads in 2 countries, Canada and the Netherlands. I had 0 reviews and 0 ratings. And I had 0 sales on volume 2 in that story collection series. Now, as of the end of my first week, my stats were 116 downloads in 22 countries. I received 1 4-star rating. No review, just a rating, because that's an option on Kobo. And I received a ranking increase. Now, I was in the hundreds and the thousands for my categories, but I was now bouncing. I got into less than the top 10, and now I've been bouncing around the top 10 and the top 20, right now between 10 and 20. And volume 2 sold 1 copy in the UK. So starting to see some positive upward trends. Nothing earth-shattering.
Where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
Nothing earth-shattering, but still positive and in the right direction. I'm seeing a relatively decent conversion based on my previous studies of the average conversion percentage from free to buy. Now, I'm still getting, as of today, June 6th, Wednesday, June 6th in the morning, I'm still getting an average of 10 downloads a day, which was better than my previous 1 per day average. So I'll take that. That's good. And as of this morning, I had 2 ratings and 1 review of Night Cries, and still a single sale of Volume 2 Ode to Classics. But again, trending positively and in the right direction. And I guess the ratings means that some people have actually not just downloaded it, but actually read it and gotten to the end because they took the time to click the rating. So when you finish reading a book on Kobo, it asks you, you can just click a quick button to do a quick rating, and then you can also post a review. For myself, I don't always post a review there, but I usually do always click the rating because then I want to move on and read my next book, and I usually don't review it. I tend to put most of my reviews on Goodreads at a later date when I have a keyboard in front of me rather than the Kobo Reader screen. Just find it easier to type with my hands on a keyboard than the hunt and peck on a smaller screen. But that's just me. Maybe there are other people who do that too. But now that the first main week of that is over, I'm likely going to try to book a few promos for that series to see if I can get some additional outside push, like maybe a Bargain Booksy, Free Booksy, or e-reader news today, etc., just to try to get some further movement. Now, and again, not just on Kobo, but on Kindle, iBooks, and Nook as well. Heck, maybe even some Google action would be nice. Now, speaking of tracking experiments, a few listeners have asked for another update on my free Friday Frights video view tracking for both Facebook and for YouTube. But rather than read through them in detail here, I've created a PDF document that contains my tracking, which I've posted a link to in the show notes at starkreflections.ca for this episode. I've also included that document openly and freely available on a June 6, 2018 post on my Patreon page at patreon.com/starkreflections. So you can check that out and the full details for every single episode and the tracking that I'm doing on that. Again, nothing earth-shattering to report.
Where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
But I am pleased that this is yet an additional way that people can potentially find out about my fiction and my nonfiction and potentially move on. Now, speaking of nonfiction, I received my annual royalty check from Dundurn. Yay! So it's fun. I can measure what I'm doing with my self-published stuff because I can, log onto the Kobo Writing Life dashboard or my Kindle Direct Publishing dashboard, and I can kind of see within 24 to 48 hours what's going on, and usually on draft to digital, depending on the retailer support, usually within 24 to 48 to 72 hours, I can see what's going on in terms of sales on different platforms. Of course, with my publisher, I find out a year later and I get this royalty statement. And again, the ebook sales are not all that large. The print book sales are where I'm making most of the money there. But again, I can't see if people have gone out and perhaps bought Haunted Hospitals, for example, because I won't know until next year when I get the next royalty statement on how that's working. So again, that's a real long-term play in terms of some of the discoverability that I am doing. But I've got off on a sidetrack in terms of thinking about that tracking. Last little update is I heard from friend and listener Scott Overton. He's a brilliant science fiction writer whose work I've published as an editor in Tesseract 16. Now, Scott's a fantastic writer, and I still remember when his story Once Upon a Midnight came into my slush pile when I was reading for the Tesseract's anthology. I knew he had a winner. In any case, Scott mentioned that he was going to borrow my idea of the story series that I'm doing with Nocturnal Screams, and he was going to give it a try for his science fiction stories. And I saw via social media that he's starting that very soon. I'm pretty excited about it. I emailed Scott back to tell him, and I am telling you, that this is one of the reasons that I'm sharing my own experiences and my own experiments with listeners. I want people to take and borrow and readapt my ideas for their own purposes, because I borrowed the idea for the story collection, that series, as a combination of things that I've done in the past that have worked, as well as chats with guests on this podcast that inspired me and other authors that I've been listening to and following. I've listened, I've heard, I've taken the ideas and I adapted it into something that I'm experimenting with, and I'm sharing it in the hopes that you maybe find something intriguing and unique that you can take and use for your own writing. And that's the great thing. We watch, we try, we listen, we learn, we experiment. We keep trying new things. We look at something someone is doing and then we adapt it into something that just might work for us. I love that about the writing community. What I do want to emphasize, though, it's important not just to do something because someone else is doing it, but to understand what your own goals and your own desires are, as well as what you actually enjoy working on. This means that you'll likely be inspired by what others are doing and you'll adapt that into your own. Now, I'm working right now with about half a dozen authors as a mentor and as a coach. They found me via my listing for marketing support via Reedsy. Now you can hear my interview with Ricardo from Reedsy in a previous episode of this podcast, which I'll link to in the show notes. And I find it fascinating that I'm working with authors from all over the world and that each of them have different goals. They have different approaches. They have different skills. And as I work with each of them, I look at all of those differences and how those differences can be leveraged in a unique way. And I find that my work with each of them is unique, and the approach I'm taking with each one is different because they all have different methodologies. They all have different goals. They all have different products. There's no one way to do things. There's no one approach. And I believe they're benefiting from working with me. They seem happy right now with what's going on and what they're getting out of it. And I, in turn, am learning even more from working with them, because with every question that they ask, that helps me re-examine what's going on and how approaching it through their perspective and their unique skills and abilities is going to potentially work. And that's the real message here. Something that I've mentioned before, and I'm going to continue to mention again, because it bears repeating. There's no one way, there's no one answer, there's no one path. That goes for you, that goes for each of your writing projects. There has to be a measure of the goals, the plans, the willingness to try different things or to not try certain things. And each project that you work on takes on its own unique life, follows its own unique twists and turns. Speaking of twists, do you hear that? Oh yeah, it's time for the tongue twister segment.
Twisted by the twisted by the fool, twisted by the fool, twisted by the fool. Such a fool.
This tongue twister is sponsored by Findaway Voices, and it was suggested by a smartass who shall remain nameless, who called me Fuzzy Wuzzy because of the situation of my hair. So I'm going to read the Fuzzy Wuzzy tongue twister, thanks to she who shall not be named. Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair. Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't fuzzy, was he? Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair. Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't fuzzy, was he? Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair. Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't fuzzy, was he? Ha ha! I may not have any hair, but I've certainly got the fuzziness down in terms of this tongue twister. Thank you, she who shall not be named, who submitted that as a suggestion. If you have any suggestions for tongue twisters or voices you want to hear me do them in, please email them to mark@markleslie.ca or leave a comment on the show notes for this episode. Now, the tongue twisters are sponsored by Findaway Voices, and you can learn more about them at starkreflections.ca/findaway. But in a nutshell, if you're looking for great professionals to work with your audio so your audio does not sound fuzzy, yeah, you saw that coming, didn't you? You can check out Findaway Voices. Great people that I've worked with in the past and will continue to work with again to get my audiobooks produced by professionals, as well as to get them distributed to the market. But enough about tongue twisting and fuzzy tongues and all the things.
Such a fool.
Now, the tongue twister segment was sponsored by Findaway Voices. That sponsorship helps pay for the hosting fees for this podcast, but it's my Patreon patrons who help pay for my time in recording and in producing the show. I'd like to thank all existing patrons for their support. And this week, I'd like to offer a welcome and a thanks to new patron, Chuck Heinzelman. Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate all Patreon supporters, and I know that I'm continuing to post additional content for you to enjoy and to benefit from. Now, speaking of Chuck, I'm going to point you back to an episode of the Stark Reflections podcast where I actually had Chuck on as a guest. Now, Chuck is the guy behind Bundle Rabbit, and you might have even heard his voice on an earlier episode of the show because in Lincoln City, Oregon, earlier this year, I had a chance to sit down with Chuck, who is a brilliant writer himself. And in episode 9 of the podcast, we talked about the collaborative publishing that you can do using Bundle Rabbit and the way that Bundle Rabbit helps authors who want to do collaborative writing projects split that so they publish to all the platforms and allow you the benefit of splitting your royalties so that it's not your responsibility as an author that has to take it and then go pay the other people. You let Bundle Rabbit take care of that. Yeah, they take a small cut for doing that for you, but it saves you all that hassle, because instead of having to deal with all the paperwork of who's going to get what, and you can change royalty percentages, for example, if you have a big name author in an anthology that you're putting together, and maybe they warrant a little bit higher of a percentage because they're the name that draws more people to that anthology, you can do things like that, and you don't have to worry about the spreadsheet headache nightmare. You get your pay from Bundle Rabbit, and the authors that you're working with all get their pay from Bundle Rabbit at the same time. So anyways, episode 9, great episode, and if you haven't checked out Bundle Rabbit, I still have on my to-do list some plans and experiments to do using Bundle Rabbit that I haven't had a chance to get into. But again, thanks, Chuck. I appreciate all Patreon supporters. Now, I, of course, appreciate all listeners. Your comments, your feedback, and your emails mean so much to me. Thank you for reaching out to me. Thanks for letting me know what you like about the show. Thanks also for letting me know the things that you're not really liking as much about the show. That's cool too. Now, many of the folks who've reached out appreciate my transparency and the sharing that I do about my own experiments. I'm glad you find it helpful, because I find the sharing of it useful, and I try to hold myself publicly accountable for the many different experiments that I'm testing out, because it seems like every week I come up with some sort of new experiment, and sometimes it's the listeners who remind me that 3 weeks ago I said I was going to try something and I haven't talked about it yet. And that's a really good kick in the pants for me. But enough about me. I've gone on for way too long. Let's get to this fascinating interview with Dan and Laura. Hey Dan, hey Laura, thanks for being on the podcast with me.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Definitely.
So I want to get into the fact, so you guys are, just so there's no misconceptions here, you guys are a husband and wife team.
Yep.
And you've been writing together. But before we get to the writing, apart from the life collaboration that you have, the beautiful collaboration that you have in your personal life, you guys were collaborating on a different sort of creative activity prior to that. Can you share with our listeners a bit about that?
Sure. Me? We've done a lot of things. When we met at my first real job after college, we discovered that we were both former film majors, and so we were really into screenwriting and movies and stuff like that.
Okay.
So we started, really that's what brought us together, I think, was our common interest. And so over time, we've written some screenplays together. We sold a screenplay, very low budget horror film, out in LA when we lived there for a time, and made a film together. And then we also have done for the last decade plus a lot of film festivals, indie film festivals. So that's something that we've done together. But we've done all kinds of things together, including audio tours in New Orleans, like audio tours of the French Quarter. So we just love working together and trying different things.
Okay.
So yeah.
Now, can I ask, are there links to any of the films that that we can share in the show notes?
The films or the film festivals?
Well, either or. But I mean, come on. If you guys have done screenplays and films, I was like, I'm dying because I want to check these things out.
Oh Lord, I'll let Dan field that
really,
one.
Really don't.
Yeah, you really don't.
We wrote our horror screenplay that we sold. We sold it to someone that made a lot of alterations to it.
Oh, I see.
A lot, and it did not end up looking like what we wrote.
He's Christian, let's just say that, and no offense to Christianity, it's just that was not where we were at when we wrote the screenplay, so it changed a lot.
And that has even happened to Stephen King, so you guys are
Yes.
a really good company. Right?
Yeah,
You go,
exactly.
I had this book, and this is what you did with it.
That's
Okay, fair enough.
what I was thinking.
Exactly what we were
if Stephen
thinking,
can
yes.
handle it, we can.
Yeah.
handle it.
Okay. Now tell me about the audio tours, because I think that's interesting, and this really, really leads the path that you guys are storytellers, and that's kind of what the audio tour is. Tell me more about those audio tours. What were they? Were they meant for tourists? Were they you put on the recorder and you walk through? Is it New Orleans? Is that
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we started off with a ghost tour. Laura and I had actually taken a ghost tour. She's from New Orleans.
Okay.
And then when we moved there, I went on a ghost tour with her, and we weren't that impressed. And we thought we could do this in our own way, which was to research the ghost stories, embellish the ghost stories, add sound effects, everything like that. So we created them. We hired narrators, and then we actually imported little credit card sized MP3 players.
Sweet.
From China, and they had a map of the French Quarter, so you could walk around, follow each point. I mean, we're still in love with our ghost tour.
Oh yeah. No, it's a lot of fun.
Well, is that something that still exists that people can?
Yeah, well, it's as an app. Yes, I mean now.
Yeah, we turned it into
an app. Okay, you're going to provide a link so we can check it out.
We can do that.
Yeah,
awesome. We have a vampire tour as well because we decided we were just having so much fun with it that.
That one's not an app yet.
So. No, that one's not an app yet, but the ghost tour one is.
How could I have known you guys for so long and not known this? Because I mean, that's one of the things I do is I put
it's
on the supernatural. Like, why haven't we chatted? Well, I guess because we were chatting about so many other things, right?
Exactly.
Well, that is fantastic.
We're complicated people, I guess.
Okay, so let's get into your fiction writing together, because it really has only been in the last few years. Mm-hmm. You've put a lot of work into it, and then you started the launch. When did you launch your first, co-authored ebook?
Just over our space opera series launched just over a year ago. Okay. Coming up anniversary, mm-hmm. And then our zombie series launched September 11th. So yeah, it's been recent, but you're right. What we did is we spent a few years learning as much as we could, meeting as many people as we could, and I think that impacted, what we're writing and how we launched.
So how important was that learning period? And I need to call out the patience that the preparedness and the patience and all the P's that this took on your behalf. I mean, you must have gotten to a point where you're watching other people do things and you went, I just want to push the publish button, but I'm going to push the patience button instead.
Well, definitely, as with many things in our life, the yin yang of us, Dan definitely wanted to hit publish a lot sooner than I did. Okay. So I'm the patience one, and I think I'm too much of a perfectionist, so I wanted it to be as polished as it could be, which is great in theory, but I mean, at some point you have to tell the story. So okay. I think that we delayed longer than we probably would have. I mean, we definitely wanted to do all the research for sure, but I think I was the one that was a little more afraid.
Okay.
Dan was ready to publish 5 years ago. So
the Zombie Chaos series was 2016.
Definitely.
Yeah. But you didn't launch that till the fall last year.
Right.
But you know what?
Well, I mean, I think it was much better for the waiting.
Okay.
I mean, what Laura ended up doing with it, before it was almost like a serial, and he did with it, I absolutely loved, and I'm so happy we waited, or so happy that she worked on it in a different way than we had intended.
Yeah, I think in the end, because we actually have 3 books published, but 7 books done right now, and in various stages of completion, and need to get out there. So we have a lot more, and I'm the one who needs to. I'm a little behind, let's just say, because I tend to take a little.
But some of those we're sitting on. Too.
Yes, that is true.
Well, because that's part of your strategy, right? Your release strategy follows a schedule, and you're mostly sticking to it. So, how do you guys collaborate on the writing and release of your series books?
Well, I think the first thing we do is when we come up with whatever story idea that we have, and the two of us work on an outline together, usually based on a 9-act structure. I then take that and I do a more fleshed out outline. We talk about that, and then I do what Laura calls a skeleton draft, which is a hybrid between screenplay and beats. It's got notes in there, but it's also got complete dialogue sections and all that.
So it's got some flesh on the bones, just a little bit, just a morbid amount of flesh. Okay.
And a lot of times it has notes that'll say describe this better, and stuff like that. So.
And I'll typically I'm finding my drafts are around 17,000 words, and then I hand it off to her.
And usually I can double, triple it. It depends. It depends on what the project is. But I then truly flesh it out into a novel.
Okay.
But because my background is literary, I went to Northwestern and had 2 majors, film and English. and they were in a concentration in screenwriting and novel writing. And so I definitely come from a literary background. So my drafts are a little too literary for our genre sometimes. The next step, once it's done, is that he will then sort of, we call it ungirlifying it. I know that's really terrible.
Re-commercialize.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. Yeah, that's better. I like that. So that's what he does. He kind of strips away some of my more literary tendencies, and makes sure that, you know, the voice is right. And then I edit it and polish it. So we definitely play to our strengths.
I mean, I don't really cut that much though, because if she gives me a 50,000 word or a 60,000 word draft back, I might only cut 3,000 words.
Right.
So not a lot. Before then she takes it back and does her editing.
Right.
Oh, that's great. And then you've planned out, because you have the 9-act arc. You've planned out a bunch of the covers in advance, and you kind of know what's coming. Is that how you've solidified the sort of the branding?
Well, the 9-act is actually, I do a 9-act structure for each novel.
Each book.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking of a larger story arc within, like, you know.
Which we do figure.
Okay.
Right, and we do figure that out, you know, for sure. Like with the zombie series, we're planning 15 books, basically 5 trilogies, if you want to say. I mean, it's the same main characters, but it's, you know, we're kind of like fulfilling some expectations at the end of each, you know, third book of those. But it is one full series. So we kind of know ahead of time, like right now we have 2 series out that are in the same multiverse. And a lot of our series are going to be intertwined that way. But, you know, we're planning, or I mean, we have been targeting separate audiences. It's just one of those things where it's kind of a nugget for any fans that do crossover, which we have had crossover. Right now we have a space opera series and a zombie series. And we kind of know ahead of time, like, where it's going. So that we, you know, we have an idea. But but the 9-act structure is literally for each book. It's our film background. You know, we kind of think in terms of.
How much has your film background influenced the writing that you guys are doing today?
With me, that's what it is. It's really screenwriting. And then like I said, I'll add the beats, add my notes and things like that. But she is the writer between us. I mean, you couldn't ever come close to publishing one of my drafts. It would not be pretty.
I love his drafts. But they help me. I mean, we obviously get along. We've been married now together for 19 years. So like, we know each other pretty well, and we have a lot of common interests. So I understand where he's coming from. I mean, I seen his skeleton drafts. I know what he wants to do, or what, you know, how the story should come alive even more. But I mean, it's there. He's a great storyteller. And I would take forever to actually structure the book. So it really helps, you know, to have him, because I think he thinks that way. And even though I had a double major and I love movies and I love film, I definitely think more in terms of novels. I definitely, you know, have more of a prose head. So,
which is
I think it works.
Perfect. I mean, it is a good combination between the two of us that we find works really, really well.
Yeah, it sounds so complementary that you can kind of leverage each other's strengths and passions and play off that for a benefit, which is fantastic. Now, I want to get into a few things that I think might be of interest to other creative types, because there's a few television programs that you guys are fans of, and you know, for the video, I can just see Laura's shoulder. I can just see the tattoo there, the beautiful tattoo that I always have to have a second look at. Now that comes from a TV show, a long-running series, doesn't it?
Yes. It's called Supernatural. It's awesome.
So you guys are both still fans of the show, and obviously the tattoo.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And what's the origin of the tattoo again? Where does it come from?
It's a demon protection tattoo. So the boys, the Winchester brothers, they actually wear it here on their chest, but it's to keep demons from invading them, basically.
Okay, and that's why Dan's got to stick with you, because you got the demon protection thing on you, and so that
exactly, I'm safe.
Protected. Okay, that's safe. And then the other thing is, tell me about Serenity.
I'll let you do that.
Well, we are both tremendous fans of Firefly. And we had decided to get rid of our apartment in the French Quarter, buy an RV, and we found a 22-foot fifth wheel, and basically decorate it and paint it like Serenity. So, and on our website, there's a whole section that shows you us going through the process of
the building of Serenity,
creating it
before and after, because it definitely doesn't look like it did. So
that's cool.
I think the reason why we were so drawn to Firefly was, characters, the absolute amazing story structure and world that Joss Whedon built for it, and it just spoke to us.
Right.
So, I mean, our love of space opera, you can definitely tell from Firefly to our War of the Way series.
And I think freedom is so important to us, and being autonomous, which is so much a part of indie publishing. I mean, it's so one of those things where we wish we had discovered it a decade ago, because, you know, it so fits us that we can do things on our own terms. We don't have any overseers telling us what to do. And I think that, so Firefly speaks to us in that way, because that's what Serenity is about, is stay flying and, you know, keep the alliance in your...
Well, I find it fascinating that the two different universes, and I know there's crossover, but the two different universes that you're writing about are driven from the things you're most passionate about enjoying as readers or consumers of content, which is a nice parallel to see. You know, we've space opera. We've got this. We're passionate about it. We live the dream, and then we have obviously the more morbid, macabre sort of zombie series that's more related to the supernatural kind of element, which I think is absolutely fascinating and important to reflect on, because you didn't decide. You probably have commercial reasonings for why you're doing what you're doing, but it's driven from an underlying passion that you've probably always had.
Oh yeah, definitely. And we realized that pretty quick when we met, that we had a lot of the same interests when it came to movies, sci-fi, fantasy, horror. I mean, we're huge horror nuts. So it makes a lot of sense what we're writing, you know, for us.
Right. Probably not always make sense marketing wise.
No.
But we were willing to take the hit. And part of it, you're right, Mark, it's because we love all of this so much that we couldn't just focus on one thing. Most people will say, oh, you should just write space opera. Just focus on that, just release that. And we just couldn't see ourselves doing that.
But we're brown coats, so we do it our own way.
Exactly.
Of course you do. I think that's also important.
We listen to people with love and understanding, and then we do our own thing.
Well, I think it's important, but that's the other thing, because I want to go back to this, because I met you guys a few times in the author community where you were there, you were attending to things, you were drawing in information, you were compiling, and then you were using that information to formulate your own unique plan.
Right, definitely, yeah. Oh no, and there are so many people that we respect in the community. I love especially learning. I'm a total sponge. So I mean, yeah, we respect a lot of people and love to learn. It's just that we know ultimately we have to take what we learn and make it our own, you know.
Exactly.
We are who we are.
That's cool. So what's one of the things that you learned from adapting and then saying, well, we needed to do it this way because it just made this part easier? Is there any specific learning that you just say, wow, this is something that I wish I had known, but I'm appreciative that I've learned? What are some of the best sort of things that you've taken away from that experience?
You mean where have we screwed up and learned our lesson?
Could be another way of saying it, yeah.
One of our huge heroes is Lindsay Buroker. I mean, she's a friend, but also we just adore her as what she does. And like, she was at the Sell More Book Show Summit in Chicago a week or so ago, and I always am in awe of her, because there's just something she's just so real and approachable, and there's no real heavy-handed hard sell about her, which doesn't work for me as well.
Right.
And so one thing she said was, be genuine, be generous. And I love that reminder, because I think that is who we are. And it's a good reminder, from a marketing standpoint, for sure, to just be ourselves and just be willing to give stories away and just invite people into our experience.
Or help other writers. I mean, we love doing that. We're a part of a community of indie writers that kind of formed off of a program that Sterling and Stone did, and now it's become this own thing. And we love helping people week in and week out. And I think that that's important to us too. But as far as learning, I mean, I think that we just get
there are other people collaborating, and we just keep sort of being reminded that this is a good thing, that what we're doing, and
right.
that works for us. Yeah, we've learned, like from Lindsay, I'd say she's great with the rapid release, and that's something that we are going to do for some of our other series, is hold them and then release them like that to, give that a shot. Because obviously we just kind of published in the beginning without really a full plan.
We knew better.
We knew better.
Right. But I think it got to the point where we wanted something out.
Yeah, we were anxious to get it out. Even I was willing to hit publish.
Whenever anyone asks us about it, at this point, we always say, well, bank a few books and then start your releasing. That would be the ideal situation.
Right.
And we didn't follow that path like we should.
No, but we learned. And I think I was having sort of last year a lack of confidence. So I just needed to hit publish finally to show that we can do this. It was like we had already gone to a few conferences and stuff, and I just felt like I didn't want to be a wannabe anymore. I wanted to get in there, because it's really the only way. I mean, we're both like this. To learn, you have to do. You have to experience and maybe make some mistakes, and you learn as you go. We're trying to make fewer mistakes by learning from others, but that's easier said than done.
I think you learn better from your own mistakes because you're right in the midst of it, right? Or ideally, you'll learn from the mistakes rather than continue to make them over and over again.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting because you talked about that, and I mean, I've been going to writers' conferences for I can't even count the years anymore, and sometimes I would be disheartened to see, the same people who are investing a lot of time and energy and money traveling to conferences, and they still haven't even finished the book they've been working on for 10 years. And again, there's a difference between that extreme and then, just wanting to I just want to get in there. I just want to get my feet wet. I just want to try it out.
I definitely understand that. I understand where they're coming from. I mean, I have a novel that I started in 2000 that is now 290,000 words, and it's mine. It's my own novel, not written with Dan, and it's going to be split into a trilogy. Like, I finally can see how it can happen. But I mean, I was that person, who had taken a decade or more to write something. And I think I will say this, and this is the advice I would give to anybody that hasn't hit publish: just do it, because once you do it, you suddenly see the possibilities, and that first book is the hardest one. Once you do it, you go, oh, wow, okay. And even if you make mistakes, you see that this is possible.
And remember, you're in this for the long haul.
Exactly. And it's okay to experiment and,
Right.
You look at Johnny from Sterling and Stone. You'd mentioned them before, and I remember in the early days of the self-publishing podcast where Johnny had that one novel that was his magnum opus that he had written, and it took him years and the whole bit, and he went from not understanding how Dave and Sean could write so many books to suddenly becoming Johnny, who puts out 5 books a year or more.
Right.
And it's kind of almost that evolution. I've taken 10 years or more with books, some of which still have never been published, but at least I was fortunate enough to publish other things, because you're right. It's that just getting in there and experiencing that, whether it's been a good experience or a bad experience, gives you a better understanding for your next steps, I think.
Right.
And you were saying before, you asked what have we learned? Another thing, and this is poor Lindsay. She's my hero. What can I say? I always talk about her.
She's a hero to a lot of us.
Right.
So wonderful. I love her to death, but and also hilarious. But anyway, what I was going to say is that her story is very inspiring to me, because her first book took, I think, about 7 years,
7 years,
to write, and then finally to get out there. And now look at her. I mean, what? She can publish 12 books in a year, and she talks about how it just gets easier with each one. And now she's at a point where each of her drafts, it's 90% there before her editor even gets a hold of it. So, and that's very inspiring to me, because I've already seen that with our work, that each one gets a little bit easier because the process is getting a little bit more honed. And so, I think the thing I learned the most is just learn by example, watching other people that I admire and seeing what they do, and giving it a shot, and realizing also, just reminding myself that I will get there too someday. I will be at that point where it won't take me, a decade to write a book. I mean, we already are at that point at least, but I mean, the books will get better with time too.
Of course.
So.
Okay, cool. Now, you talked about collaboration beyond the two of you and your beautiful multi-layered collaboration. You talked about inviting other people in and helping other people. Can you talk a little bit about any forthcoming projects that might involve some of this?
That's not planted or anything.
That's me trying to draw this out to see how much more information we can get from you.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, we do. Like I said, we're in a group of writers. We've had a few anthologies with them that we've put out, and realized that anthologies are a lot of work, and you don't always see a financial return with them, especially, since a lot of us are relatively newbie writers. So, we don't have huge audiences yet or anything.
Well, there are a few. There are a few.
Definitely there are a few, but not all of us. And so we wanted to bring together all the writers we love, and people that we consider our friends, and people that we hope to see succeed as well, into a massive project that would try to help all of us. So, in fact, Mark, you're involved in it too, aren't you? So we're excited because we can come back in the fall when we have more details about it, to tell your listeners about it. But basically, we're super excited because it's bringing together a lot of people we love. And
right now it's 43 writers.
Right. And we, just really want to see people. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and that was sort of taking it to the next level. It was a lot to, meet people. We meet with our writer buddies every week, and we try to encourage them, and, they encourage us too. I mean, it's a love fest, and, accountability check-ins and all of that kind of stuff. But this was a way to actually maybe put our money where our mouth is, and, actually do something that helped us all and was exciting, fun. So, yeah.
Well, I am definitely looking forward to having you guys back on in a future episode for the fall, so we can talk a little bit more about this in detail. But just, I think it's important to understand that it's collaboration, it's inclusivity, it's all about helping one another, and it's all about the things that the community can do when they really put their hearts and minds together. Which I'm really excited to see you guys take this, which I believe is part of the evolution of publishing in general, which is awesome. So congrats on that, and I look forward to giving some updates on that. Now, in the meantime, people who have listened to you guys and gotten as excited as I have, where can they find, buy, read your stuff?
Well, you can go to themartones.com. And you'll have links to both series out, and then, like we said, the building of Serenity.
Yes.
If you want to check that out. So everything links through there.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then I'm going to ask each of you to share your favorite bit of advice that you like to give in general to the writing community. So I'll give you a chance to reflect on that.
Okay.
Favorite bit of writing advice.
Oh,
ladies first.
Oh, my Lord.
There you go.
Well, honestly, I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but again, I love Lindsay Buroker, and I just
she
love
hates hearing that. I bet you.
I bet you she does. I love what she says about being genuous. Oh, there's a new word. Be genuine and generous.
You've made up a new word. You better.
I like that. Actually.
I like it, genuous. Oh my God. But yeah, no, I just think that's a reminder. I think, we hear lots of other stuff about writing craft and marketing and everything, but I think it's important to just remember to be yourself and be okay with giving more, to under promise and over deliver, as people say, I don't know. I love that. I love to surprise people and give them more than they expected.
And that's a great thing about the indie community. There is a lot of that out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
definitely. I think my one piece of advice would be to just keep writing. Write, don't stop at the one book. Move right on to the next book. I think, and a lot of the indies out there will say that the best part of marketing, the best thing you can do to market, is to write your next book. Okay. And that is without a doubt true.
And that's the Serenity motto, right? To keep flying. Yeah. So
keep flying. That is awesome. Now, speaking of flying, for listeners of this podcast who are fascinated by you guys and potentially interested in where might I see these people in person in the next 6 to 9 months? Where are you guys going to be like different writers' conferences or whatever, so people can say, oh my God, I want to make a point of meeting the Martones?
Yeah, we're going out. We're doing a Western trip starting in the beginning of October,
With Serenity,
probably after the launch of that earlier project. And we'll be at the 20 Books conference in Vegas. The funny thing is, last year we were there, and they have an RV park at the location.
Samstown, yeah.
And we had a whole line of people coming over to see Serenity.
I'll be there with a camera. I want to get some.
Oh yeah, we love showing her off. Of course, our little baby, our fur baby, Ruby Azazel, lives in there with us, and so she's not as excited to meet visitors as we are, but it's fine. She hasn't bit anybody yet, so that's fine.
Yeah, that's important. Yet.
Yet.
We'll get some live video of that happening.
Yes, exactly.
She's the Jane of the crew.
Yeah, she is the Jane of the crew. That is definitely true.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to hang out with me this morning.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
You know that, so thanks a lot.
It's funny, I had recorded the intro to this episode before listening back to my chat with Daniel and Laura, which I had interviewed them several weeks ago. So I didn't even remember that one of the things that I was just harping on about in my pre-interview chat I'm going to play in this interview. But that was good timing, because what they said reinforced that, and it needs to be reinforced because it's important. I love how much Laura and Dan have been driven and motivated by their passion for the things that they love to enjoy experiencing, and that they're creating the same things that they love to read and watch. And of course, they spent a significant amount of time watching and listening and learning before applying their storytelling experience into the recent book series they have published. They learned, they adapted, and they did it their own way. They did it their own unique way that was right for the two of them working together. And the way that they work together is different than the way that they work separately, as Laura talked about that novel that she was working on. Again, they've adapted each unique situation in their own unique way for what works best. And they keep flying. And that's the second reflection that I have from their experience that they shared. They spoke about the importance of actually pushing that publish button, of learning from those mistakes, because it's almost as if inaction breeds inaction, but action breeds action. It harkens back to a writing quote I've always admired, and it's that writing begets more writing. The act of writing often inspires more writing. That's what NaNoWriMo, or National Novel Writing Month, is all about. Getting writers to write every day, to get into the practice of writing every day. And Dan and Laura have learned that actually publishing was in itself a teacher that they continued to learn from as they moved forward and continued to write and continued to publish. Are you at a point where, after years of writing and polishing, you're still hesitating over that publish button, or that package it up and send it to an agent or publisher step? What is stopping you from the next step? Was it Wayne Gretzky, the hockey player, who said that you miss 100% of the shots you never take? What is the benefit of holding on to something and not taking that next step, not publishing, not submitting? Inaction breeds more inaction. Writing begets writing. Publishing begets publishing. Action breeds more action. Well, those are my reflections from what I learned from this great interview with Laura and Dan. What are your reflections? Feel free to share those in the show notes. Thanks so much for joining me today. Now it's time to bid you farewell so we can both get back to our writing. We'll see you in episode 25 next week. So until then, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you good writing and good reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.